Vasquez possibly coming back to Houston. Well, today he decides to sign with the Twins. Go figure, that's baseball. They threw some money at him, or maybe he just didn't think he'll get enough playing time. So now Bob Nightingale brought up a trade that the Astros are engaged in. Can they actually pull this trade off? That's to be seen. So we'll talk about this and more on this special edition of the Locked On Astros podcast.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talk Stros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can I find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
All right, guys, thank you for making Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day. Whether it's on YouTube, go and keep on subscribing. Go and give us a big thumbs up and go and like us. Tell a friend, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. And just go ahead and listen to us on the way to work on the audio version on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, check out the Locked On Astros podcast. We're your team every day. So I know that we already did a podcast earlier, and thank you for all those of y'all that tuned in. But we wanted to go ahead and address this. We meant to talk about this on the show. I know Brandon and I talked about it on Talking Stros, but the three outfielders that they are possibly being traded by the Diamondbacks, they have a whole bunch of outfielders available. That doesn't mean they're going to be cheap. And the one I mentioned, I thought that the Astros would be going after was Daulton Varsho. I think that he is exactly what the Astros need. He can play catcher. He can play center field. He can play left field. He can play right field. He is basically he can play any position. And so I know in fantasy baseball, it's great to have him because you can stick him at the catcher spot and basically have an outfielder playing catcher. But at the same time, he can be a catcher. Now, does that mean he'll be the backup catcher? Who knows? He could be playing left field if they give it to Chas McCormick, but he can also play catcher. So there's so many options with a guy like Varsho that also makes him very, very expensive. And the Diamondbacks are not going to give him away. And he has 4 years of team control left. And last year he had, 27 home runs, had 16 stolen bases, batted .235 with 74 RBIs. He had a OPS of 745, a OPS plus of 109. I know a lot of people are saying, well, you're not going to trade everything for a guy like this. Well, this guy has only been playing baseball for 3 years. He has some room to grow. And in a lineup as stacked as the Houston Astros are, if you put him batting 7th, 8th, this just changes the whole dynamic of this team.
I think it does, but I think with Varsho, you can kind of go all over the map. As I was witnessing the bloodbath that is Astros Twitter and Martin Maldonado and people's head exploding because we didn't sign Vasquez and let him get away for 3 years, $30 million. You would think that in Astros Twitter world that the Astros are coming off of a barely missing the playoff season. You wouldn't think they won 106 games. You wouldn't think they just won the World Series in one of the most dominating fashions we've ever seen. You would think that Martin Maldonado was the reason why the Houston Astros lost the World Series, even though he played with a sports hernia and a broken hand, and they still won and dominated. So we've got that on the table. So Daulton Varsho does offer versatility, but he's not a very good defensive catcher. And I can tell you that I think Daulton Varsho's high price tag and the fact that Brent Strom is at the helm with the pitchers there in Arizona, that they're not going to go quietly into the storm. They're going to want a Luis Garcia, a Jose Urquidy. They are going to want a Hunter Brown. They are going to want a Christian Javier. They're going to want a frontline pitcher. And you could package maybe a Garcia and a McCormick But you wouldn't just want to get Varsho back. You could get Varsho. Maybe you get Corbin Martin back. He's off his injury. I know I saw him pitch in AAA this last year. He was excellent. Mantiply, who is a left-handed pitcher. But here's the thing, Eric. I really think that the signs are all in front of us. They didn't go after Sean Murphy. They didn't really go after Vasquez after Mark Berman towards the end of the season tweeted out or said something there's this handshake agreement between the Astros and Vasquez to try to bring him back. This is what I think the Astros plan is. Martin Maldonado is your starting catcher for 2023, and Yanier Diaz and Corey Lee are absolutely fighting for that backup position. And I think they believe in one of these two guys as backup to eventually be the catcher for this team until someone else comes along, because that is what the writing on the wall tells me. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I vehemently disagree with that, you can disagree with that. I get it. I understand. Maldonado's a year older. Maldonado's not getting any younger. Maldonado's bat is an absolute zero for the most part. Now, he did have a career high 15 home runs. In those 15 games, the Astros won those 15 games. He hit home runs. Now, does that mean that his home run was the game winner every time? No, but it's a funny stat to throw out there. And so if you're trying to legitimize Maldy's place on this team, but you still can't ignore his leadership, Eric. And if you couldn't get Vasquez, if you didn't go after Murphy, I don't know why you would go after Varsho. Now, if you're getting Varsho to play center field mainly, and you're getting him for his power bat, then I understand that. But you're not bringing him in, I don't think, because of Diaz and Lee. If we didn't have Diaz and Lee, I think Daulton Varsho is more realistic. But then again, Daulton Varsho is not he's not a great catcher. He's a very good center fielder. He's a marginal catcher at best, but he's an excellent bat. I mean, this kid can run down a ball in the outfield. He's got a cannon of an arm, and he can hit for power. So Brady says, I'm confused. Why would we want him? Because of those things that I lined out, because he has got some tools that you could absolutely use in this lineup.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to get him to be a catcher. I think the fact that he can play catcher, that is an asset, and he may report to spring training early with the pitchers and catchers and learn the pitching staff just in case he does catch if the Astros do trade for him. But yes, the Astros are gonna try to save Christian Javier. That's a no-go. You're gonna try to save Hunter Brown. That's possibly a no-go. But you're gonna have to give up a Luis Garcia. You're gonna have to give up a Pedro Leon. You may have to give up one of your catchers, like either Hunter Lee, Corey Lee or Diaz. You may have to give up one of them. You may have to give up a lot of talent to get this guy. But this guy can play multiple positions for you. He can play right field. He can play left field. He can play center field. He's played the same amount at each position basically in his career. And he's played 82 games at catcher, 83 at right field, 98 in center field. And he's only played 17 games in left field, but that doesn't mean anything. I think left field is possibly the easiest position, especially at Minute Maid Park. So I think if the Astros would go out to get him, it's the fact that he does have power, he does have speed, and he is under team control until 2027 or 2026. That's his last year of team control. So he's cheap. You don't have to pay millions of dollars to get him. And yes, you're going to have to give up some of your pitching depth. But you also have JP France. You have some other guys that could step up, or you can go out and sign one of those free agents still out there. So I'm not saying this is going to happen. I know that Bob Nightingale, for whatever you want to say about Bob Nightingale, but he did say that the Astros have engaged in trade discussions with the Diamondbacks regarding Varsho. He is under team control through 2026, produced a 4.9 WAR, a 745 OPS, and 151 games for Arizona in 2022. So it's going to be a steep price, but that's what you want to get if you want to feel safe with your outfield. If you want to have maybe the extra bat in the lineup. And that's what it feels like that Jim Crane is trying to do. So while we're talking about feeling safe, let's talk about Simply Safe. And this episode is brought to you by Simply Safe.
Yeah, Simply Safe alarms are here for you. And if we believe here at Locked On Astros that home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays this season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection. The number one home security system, Simply Safe. And right now, Simply Safe is offering Locked On Astros listeners 40% off a new security system. But don't put this off, because right now, this company was voted the best home security system of 2022 for the third year in a row from U.S. News and World Report. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence, verify if the threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. HD security cameras inside and out, and smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when the threat is real. Basically, it detects fires, floods, and threats from your home, and the cost is under $1 a day, less than half of the price of traditional home security systems. So, to go with that money-saving theme, listen to this offer. Don't miss this chance to save big. 40%. Locked On Astros, that's right. You get 40% on Simply Safe system. Go to simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Alrighty. So I know a lot of Astros fans were thinking, well, we could go out there and trade for Sean Murphy. Well, the Braves did, even though they have Denard, they went out and traded for Sean Murphy. And it took a a 3-team trade to make it work. And it was a pretty impressive trade. And they had to give up uh, Kyle Mueller to get that done, and a whole bunch of other little minor prospects. And then you had to involve the Brewers to get kind of a lot of the missing pieces, the moving pieces to get the deal done. But that's what the Astros may have to consider if they're going to get a deal done for Varsho, because it's going to be a lot of pieces, and kind of like what the Astros did to get wasn't a trade Mancini. They had to do a 3-way trade. So
Yes.
yeah, they had to give up Jose Siri. So that could be a situation we see here, because honestly, the Astros don't have a lot of prospects to trade. If you do, Pedro Leon, he's going to be a big asset for this team. You think that the Diamondbacks would want an outfielder, but they're trying to trade outfielders. So why would they want Chas McCormick? That doesn't make any sense. They're probably going to want a starter. They may want some infield depth. You don't really have that. You're not going to trade Bregman. You're not going to trade Pena. You're not going to trade Altuve. You're not going to trade Jose Abreu. So you don't really have that to make a trade unless you're going to trade away somebody like David Hensley as part of the
Yeah.
deal. So that could be a possibility. Trade away Hensley, then maybe re-sign Yuli Gurriel. And I'm sure somebody else can step up to be the super utility guy, but there are options. But the more I think about it, it's going to be scary, but it's not impossible for this deal to get done. I mean, with the money that's being thrown around, yes, Andrew Benintendi is still out there. Michael Conforto is still out there. There's still Michael Brantley. I still think that's a realistic possibility that he comes back to Houston. Um, I don't really know about Yuli Gurriel at this point, but the Astros need at least one more bat to this lineup. I'm okay with going with either Diaz or Lee as the catcher, as the backup catcher, but they need another either DH or left field / person to kind of complete this lineup, and Varsho would be that kind of guy.
Well, but I don't know that I like what you have to give up. Here's the thing. The value of players, and I don't know if a lot of people look at this stuff, because I've been looking at it more because I'm not ultra educated on it like some people are. But a player's value, so like someone like a Altuve or Bregman, they have no value because they have such high contracts. Okay, the guys that have value are the guys that have club control. They're younger. They don't have massive salaries attached to them. And so that's going to be, or if they have options, like Corey Lee is at a 6'5", Sean Dubin's at a 1.4, right? Sean Dubin doesn't have a lot of value there, but McCormick, his value is pretty dang high. It's over 20. And so you could basically take McCormick and Luis Garcia, and that would be the value of Varsho. But I don't know that the Diamondbacks do that. When you look at this three-way trade, the Atlanta Braves gave up William Contreras, Justin Yeager, and Joel Pomayas, two very good right-handed pitcher prospects. Then Oakland got Kyle Mueller.
Manny Pena.
So I'm sorry, I got it.
Freddie Tarnok and Royber Salinas.
Yeah, and then USG Ruiz. Sorry, I could not get it out. Sorry, I started stuttering there for a second. But some of these names I'm looking at, these were very good players. Sean Murphy, Atlanta got their catcher. Obviously, their other guy, Darno's not going to be their guy. The Houston Astros here, I think, stand pat. I don't think they make this move. Actually, I don't want them to make this move. I'm fine with Maldi, and people can roast me for that all they want to. I say you stick with Maldi. I say you put. I'm hearing that Diaz has basically gone in front of Corey Lee in what the Astros see as the backup catcher, and I think I'm completely fine with that. I don't necessarily know that you need another bat because you added Jose Abreu. You don't have Yuli Gurriel anymore. You're more than likely not going to sign him. Elvis told us, together after the show that Yuli wants to play at least 2 more years. And I don't think the Astros are going to sign Yuli to a 2-year contract. I find that very hard to believe.
Maybe 1-year deal with a club option for the second year
Right.
based on incentives.
But if he wants to play 2 years, he's not going to sign a 1-year. I mean, that second year deal is going to have to be pretty sweet. And I don't see that happening. I see them sticking with someone like Michael Brantley, going with another budget option of Michael Conforto, again, Corey Dickerson, someone like that. With Jose Abreu being in this lineup, with a David Hensley as a utility player, you have plenty of contact guys, and you have a lineup top to bottom that has only one hole in it, and that hole is your catching position. And if you're willing to live with that, I think you basically bring them back and you go out there and you get the World Series in 2023.
And I know the Astros are a little bit higher on Diaz's bat than Lee's bat.
Oh, yeah.
But I think they're higher as Corey Lee as a catcher per se. He's got the better defensive skills. So what happens if Diaz just goes crazy during spring training and he earns the job as the DH? Then you've filled your spot right there. But what Jim Crane and the front office is doing right now is they don't want to be in that position. Well, let's just wait and see what happens in spring training. They're going to go out there and see, okay, what would it take to get Varsho? What would it take to go out I think it might even be easier to go trade for Brian Reynolds. That's how much I think the Diamondbacks really value this guy. But I think that if you're looking at the fact that he could play catcher as well, what if Diaz struggles? What if Lee struggles? What if Maldonado continues to regress? And what if I know that he had the what was it, the groin issue,
sports hernia surgery?
Yeah. What if I'm sure it's going to be healed by then, but what if he's not the same defensive catcher after that or something like that? So
I think some people would argue that he wasn't the same defensive catcher this year. He had a lot of pass balls, and maybe that's why, because I don't know, Eric, there were times in the playoffs where he let a lot of stuff get by him. Right. And maybe that was that hernia. It was that broken hand. Right. I think a fully healed and rested Martin Maldonado right now is your best option because, again, you're not giving away assets. You're not going, okay, we're going to take a chance of getting rid of this guy. And again, I think with Brent Strom, he knows our pitchers. He's not going to let us get off scot-free. He's not going to let us fleece them like we fleeced the Pirates to win in 2 trades with them back-to-back times. So I think the Diamondbacks are going to be a tough sell here for the Astros. Now, if the Astros desire to sign Varsho because they value him. Someone in the ownership group or someone values him over and above what you and I can speculate or anybody listening can speculate, then you know what? They'll throw the baby out with the bathwater and they'll do it. This is where, as fans and as commentators and as people of this team, we have to trust that Jim Crane will continue to make the right decisions. Because remember, folks, spending in the offseason doesn't always equal success. And success doesn't always equal spending. And something else, Eric, if we don't spend now, we will have money at the trade deadline to get somebody that we can add a key piece at the trade deadline. We'll have 40 plus in room. And if we don't go out and sign a massive left fielder or Benintendi and break the bank on someone like that, you have the ability to go out and make a blockbuster trade. Maybe not as impactful as JV, but somewhere darn near close because you'll have the money. Why not go that route?
Yeah. And I know that it's probably just a lot of speculation, and I know Bob Nightingale's the only one reporting it. But we also saw the article last week that the Astros, I think Chandler Rome retweeted something from the Arizona area, and they mentioned it as well. So you can bet that there's some type of talk going on there. So I would kind of suspect that Bet Online, maybe some odds out there that this could happen. So betonline.net is your number one source for all sports betting information, stats, news, analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We got it all here at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Who's going to win a World Series next year? Where do the Astros fit? I mean, who's going to win the MVP? Who's going to be the Cy Young? Would Justin Verlander win the Cy Young again next year? I'm sure you'll find all those at BetOnline as well. So head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. So I know that the Astros don't have to go out and get another bat, but it would be a lot easier to deal with Maldonado's weak bat, so to speak,
Okay, but hold
if
on.
you have
Hold
the
on.
extra bat in the lineup.
Okay, but we had two bats that were bad this year, Eric. We won 106
Well, we
games.
had pitching, and I'm not
Okay,
saying
hold
that
on.
pitching is going to
Hold
suck.
on, hold on. Time out. Hold on.
I know.
Let me make my statement here and then you can rebut, sir. I have the floor. Defense has the floor. Sorry, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. No, not really. Sorry, Brandon. I couldn't do what you do. The Astros, okay, they they don't they don't have to go out and make these trades or go out and get another bat because we had Maldonado and we had Yuli had one of the worst offensive seasons, and yet we still won 106 games. I don't think the need for another bat is as dire as you are presenting it to be. I don't like we just won the World Series. I'm thinking if we fell short in the World Series, if we fell short and we struggled getting there because of our offense, then I'm like, yes, we need to like ramp it up, right? But that's where I'm standing. So I'm going to have to disagree a little bit. I don't know that we need to go get a bat. It would be nice to get another bat. It would be nice to have 1 through 9 hitting 280, but that's not a realistic ball club. That never happens. That rarely happens. And who else is out there that's going to hit 270, 280? I mean, it's not going to, Daulton Varsho, if you bring him on to be like, is he going to come in and be the DH? And if he's the DH, then what's Jordan going to do when he's not playing left field? I don't know. I think things are fine. Stand pat for the trade deadline, spend right there. And who knows, between now and the trade deadline, maybe you give an extension to Kyle Tucker. Because let me tell you something, boys and girls, Kyle Tucker's price is going through the roof. And after this season, he's going to be considered a $400 million player before he is let go. And if that happens, I don't think Kyle Tucker for the long term ends up an Astro.
All right, so I saw somebody talking about a look at the spray chart, and I'm looking at the spray chart right now. I wasn't able to pull it up, but he's a majority pull hitter. He hits a lot to left field, but a lot of them were hit where probably players were shifted. So so now that the shift is gone, I would say that he's going to get a lot more hits because I'm looking at where Jose Altuve would typically play during a shift, and that's where a lot of his balls would go. So I think that you're going to see him probably hit a lot more, getting a lot more hits because he's hitting that area, just like Kyle Tucker would, just like Alvarez was. I think he is going to do pretty good there. So I know his average exit velocity is in the 25th percentile. His max exit velocity is 66 percentile. His
Mhm.
hard hit percentage is in 25 percentile. Those don't really kind of jump at you. But one thing that does jump at you is his outfielder jump time or jump rating. It's at 97th percentile. So he's a great outfielder. He can go out there and play some great defense out there. His outs above average are 99 in the 99th percentile. So he's a great outfielder. He can go out there, play center field like a champ. And so it's great. His arm strength may not be the best. It's at 45th percentile, but he can go out there and mash. He can steal you some bases. And to answer your question, the Astros don't need to make this trade. They don't need to add another bat. But we've talked about all offseason that Jim Crane is not satisfied. He's not satisfied with having a couple glaring holes in the lineup. He wants to improve. And why have they been after Contreras? Why have they been after Sean Murphy? Why have they been interested in bringing back Christian Vasquez? Because they do want to upgrade the catching position. That was one of their weaknesses, and a lot
But
of people forget that we had no real center fielder really until the playoffs. And that's
well,
when Chas McCormick kind of took over. Now, just like Yuli did, Yuli got really hot in the playoffs. So did Chas McCormick. I'm not saying he can't, but
but
what if Chas McCormick can't really duplicate that success? I mean, I know he had a good OPS plus during the regular season,
yeah,
but there was a time where Dusty Baker didn't even really play him that often. You,
well,
you
yeah,
remember that time?
I do remember that. But when Chas McCormick was given the job and given the opportunity, he absolutely excelled. Chas McCormick's swing and his bat covers the entire plate, not just a part of the plate, the entire plate. And that's
Right.
huge when you talk about barreled baseballs, when you talk about contact, expected numbers, all that stuff. So Chas McCormick fits the profile. To me, it's his job to lose. And you lose nothing in keeping Chas McCormick on. Chas
Right.
McCormick hit 245 with 17 home runs. He could be a 20 plus home run guy this next year because he's got another bat in the lineup that's going to offer him more protection. And if you're going to, I would bat Chas McCormick ninth like you've always been. And that way he has Altuve hitting behind him and then Pena thereafter. And so I just think you stick with Chas McCormick. I think he's earned the job. I think he probably this next year has probably his best season because he'll be motivated because he's earned this place.
Right.
Jake Myers is going to be your backup. He came back too early. His confidence still is something that you worry about. Will he get his skills fully back? And then again, we've got guys like David Hensley. And if Chas McCormick doesn't perform, then you bring up Pedro Leon. I don't see the logic in getting rid of people that are viable parts of this Major League Baseball team for one player when you've got not only Leon, you've got Dearden in the wings. You've got Jolks who's still here. You've got a plethora of center field talent that has not even been able to be tested or had a chance. So my thing is, I know Crane wants to improve. Good job, you improved. You got Jose Abreu. Wait until the trade deadline. Go get somebody then. I mean, if they were wanting to improve so bad, maybe they should have gone and got Chris Bassett. I mean, added another pitcher so they have a 6-man rotation. Things like next year are going to be key. Can Lance McCullers hang in a 5-man rotation? Can he stay healthy? Okay. can the relief pitchers replicate what they did? If those two things can happen, then I think all of this talk about Varsho and spending all this capital on Murphy and all these other guys is all for naught, because the Astros are still set up. They are still the favorites in the American League. And I really don't think the Yankees are going to go out and get anybody else. So those are the only teams. The Blue Jays are adding people, but the Astros are still the team to beat.
Right. And I'm not saying that Varsho is going to replace McCormick. McCormick's probably going to play center field, but he can play left field when Alvarez is not out there. He
But
can
I
play
think
catcher.
McCormick is traded. I think McCormick is in this trade, because if you trade a major league center fielder, you're going to want something back to replace that, because
Yeah, but
Varsho is a very
the
good player.
Diamondbacks don't need a center fielder. They have all these center fielders. That's the reason why they're trading one of these guys.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, the only way it would work is if you have a 3-team trade where you trade them to someone. I'm just making up, like the A's or somebody that actually needs a center fielder, and you can make the numbers, the math work that way. But yeah, I see what you're saying. But I think that you can get Varso without trading McCormick. It'll be hard, but that's what the three-headed beast, the
Well, then
GMs,
I think. Well,
the
then I
assistant
think
GMs, got to decide. What?
that's okay. I think if you don't trade McCormick, I think you're going to have to get rid of 1, 2 viable pitchers and like a Leone. And why would you do that? Like, Leone hasn't even been able to come into his own. I don't know. I think if the Varsho thing happens, you could have a lot of people, involved, and more people than you want. And I just don't like the idea. I'm not as big. Like, when I heard the Varsho trade at first, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But then I saw his value. I was like, I don't know. Y'all can keep him in Arizona. We're good. So I'm a stand pat guy. I'm not a scorched earth guy. I don't think because Martin Maldonado's on this team we're going to fail. Like, somebody literally said, "Well, what if we don't make the playoffs?" Like, if you don't think this team's going to make the playoffs because of Martin Maldonado, you have just told me that you haven't watched a single game of Houston Astros baseball. Like, seriously, he is not. Everybody's acting like Martin Maldonado is the kryptonite of the Astros. He freaking played with a hernia and a broken hand, and we still swept the first 2 series. We still won the World Series 4-2. Don't forget that. And stop. Like, I don't understand what people want. Like, what else do you want? Like, would the Astros have to win 125 games with Martin Maldonado for y'all to, like, we know where his tools are and where they aren't. We know his age. We get that. But he's a leader on this team. The pitchers trust him. And until the Astros don't want him, it doesn't matter what you or I think. He is still a viable part. He's the captain of this team. And that Elvis told me that before this. He is the captain of this team. And you don't have to like Maldonado. But you know what? The Astros don't care if you don't like Maldonado, because he's their guy. And until they move on, just deal with it, man, because the Astros are still going back to the World Series.
So to close out the show real quick, just off the top of your head, percent odds. What's the odds that the Varsho trade gets done?
42%.
Wow, that's higher.
No, 32%.
Oh, I was about to say that's higher than I thought you would say.
32%.
Okay, I'm going to say because they've lost out on all the players they've lost out on, and I don't think they want to pay Andrew Benintendi the money he wants. They may still go out and sign Conforto, but the options are kind of going away. So I think the odds are probably, no, I hate to say 50%, but I think there's a pretty good chance that they try to get it done. I'm not saying they get it done, but I think it's a 50% chance they try to get it done. But I just don't know if they have the pieces to get it done unless they maybe trade like McCormick, like you said. So I know Dorothy says 70%. Carl says 15%. Eric user 111 says 40%. Erod TV says 7%. But it's an interesting discussion. Like, fans, what do you think? I mean, is it a possibility? Are we living in a dream world where we can trade, do something like the Garrett Cole trade where we can trade away crap, and Justin Verlander trade where we throw go ahead.
This is what you have to understand about trades. is there's no such thing as a good trade in a fan's mind. You know why? Because a good trade never factors in the other team also getting something. And a
Right.
good trade in Major League Baseball is when both teams get something out of it. And if you're going to get something from a team that they value, and Johnny, 89%, what is that like? What is that what percent alcohol you're drinking? Is that your 89 proof alcohol? No, it is not an 89% deal, 55%. I do know that the Astros are high on him. That doesn't
Yes.
mean they're going to get it done. I would not be happy if they gave up a Garcia or Javier or Brown to make this deal get done, which I don't think they will, but I think that's the only way something like this gets done. You've got to throw in a high value pitcher
Right.
with someone like McCormick. And the reason why I say McCormick, Eric, is because he has high value. And McCormick is even a guy that you can flip at the trade deadline as well. If he's having a great year and you want to trade him off and get some prospects, rent him for half a season, let him go out there and be balls to the wall McCormick, and then trade him because he's got massive value right now.
Yeah. And so I know that we talked to Millard, the Locked on Diamondbacks guys, before the show. We tried to get him on a podcast, but he couldn't do it tonight. He said he may be able to do a short one tomorrow, but he said the Yankees are really also in on him too. So we'll see
I
what
can see
happens.
that.
But so I don't know we don't know what's going to happen, but it's kind of cool to hear that the Astros are trying to make stuff happen. Whether it happens, one thing we know about Jim Crane is he doesn't do stupid stuff. He's not going to go out there and throw 11 million or 11 years at a shortstop. He's not going to go out there throw 9 years at a shortstop and all the stuff that we've been seeing across baseball. That's probably, I don't know if it's good for the sport. It's exciting for the teams that get them, but then at the back end of the deal, when they're 39 years old, 40 years old, how are you going to feel about that? So, Brett, go ahead and close us out.
Yeah. So, and one last thing, let's not forget this. The Astros just went to their sixth straight ALCS, fourth World Series, and won their second in 6 years. Now, all of a sudden, you're telling me that Jim Crane, because there's not a GM, doesn't know how to run a baseball team. Jim Crane has been at the helm at every one of these decisions, no matter what's happened. James Click didn't hold Jim Crane back. Jim Crane is the owner and he's in control. If you don't know that, ask anyone who's worked for Jim Crane in the Houston Astros. The Astros are fine. It's not scorched earth, and the sky is not falling. Maldonado will do his job. Yanner Diaz, I think, is going to have a great year, and I think he wins the backup job. This has been Locked On Astros. After you make us your first listen, make sure you make Locked On Today your second listen. And thank y'all for hanging out with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Apple, Google, Spotify, the Odyssey app, or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always,
Go Astros, and we'll see you tomorrow. And we have a special guest coming up pretty soon. We'll talk about that and more on the next Locked On Astros podcast. Go Astros.